We're so excited about this campaign.
Well, I think this is exactly what GB News should be doing.
Yeah.
And we'll come to the campaign. Just to say, the banks are for the high jumpers you want. They've been asked to go, or ordered to go to the headmaster's study. We'll see what happens. But it's been the case for years and years and years that as soon as interest rates go up, the Bank of England puts up interest rates. Immediately, as lenders, mortgage companies, the banks, within 24 hours, the mortgage rate goes up. You got the letter plopping on your doormat by the end of the week, haven't you? And yet when it comes to putting up rates for savers, it can take months and months and months, if at all.
Why are they... I mean, they can get away with it because they run a business and they've got to make profits, but it seems immoral.
Well, that's a strong word, but it does feel that way for a lot of people. If you have got a little bit of money in the bank and you're not getting anything for your savings, and yet the bank is instantly charging your kids, say, more money for their mortgage, for a loan, for money that the bank raised,
credit cards,
often years earlier. And the bank does it, of course, to widen its margin. But we're also looking closely at the banks here on GB News, and we're looking closely at the financial services industry in general, because we are launching this campaign, Don't Kill Cash. Why? Because we've had so many emails and tweets and letters from GB News viewers and listeners that they are sick and tired that they can't use cash anymore, and clearly there are big vested interests who don't use cash because it costs businesses money to handle cash. There's the counting of it, there's the security aspects of it, and also if we're using a lot less cash, then that means there's more so-called surveillance capitalism, where the banks can follow your patterns of expenditure, internet companies can follow your patterns of expenditure, and then, of course, that data can be sold to third-party companies who are interested in marketing.
And if you take it to its logical conclusion, and you have a certain type of government that wants to be more authoritarian, in collaboration with the banks, they can stop your access to buying the things that you want. I mean, that's what happens in China.
They absolutely can stop access to things that you want to buy. They can introduce things like social credit systems where your behaviour determines whether or not you can spend. I'm not saying that the British government wants to do that, but there are certainly signs of that in some Asian countries, not least China, as you say. But just looking up the numbers, let's have a look at some of the numbers here when it comes to the extent to which we are cashless. Hugh, it's a Liam graphic, drum roll. So back in 2012, 60% of transactions used cash. And you'll remember, even, 5 years ago, my wallet always had cash in it.
Mine still does.
I knew almost exactly how much cash I had in my wallet. I couldn't tell you now, because now, in 2022, the latest numbers, these are from UK Finance, a very authoritative industry body, just 30% of transactions have used cash. I mean, that's unreal. And the prediction from UK Finance is that by 2035, we're going to be looking at less than 10% of transactions using cash.
I think that's optimistic.
And on top of that, since 2018, and we're not telling a lot of people here stuff they don't know, 20% of ATMs, those automatic teller machines where you can get cash, the hole in the wall, if you like, 20% of them have closed. So who does this affect? This really affects people without bank accounts. There are 10 or 15% of households in the UK, they're called unbanked. They haven't got the credentials or the wherewithal, unfortunately, or the ID or the income to warrant a bank account. It's the little old lady with huge respect who's trying to park in her market town in her little old car. And, she hasn't got a smartphone. You've got to download a million different apps. You need to be on Wi-Fi hotspot. What's that? I don't know. And so lots of people, particularly elderly people, or just people in a hurry, they end up getting parking tickets. They're perfectly willing to pay, but they have to get on an app.
Or they drive back home, and that means the shops are losing business.
Exactly. Or they go to the supermarket out of town. And this is a real issue. The parking apps is a real issue that's featured in our letters and correspondence with GB News viewers and listeners. And we're talking to parliamentarians too. And what's amazing is our amazing digital team here at GB News, this is very much their kind of brainchild. They've launched a petition. We've already got, within 24 hours, 37,000 signatures.
Not even.
What we need is 100,000 signatures, and then we can start pushing for a debate in Parliament. We were in Parliament last night, weren't we, Bev, talking to MPs from across parties. There's a real head of steam about this, and they're going to hopefully back our campaign.
And then hopefully Rishi Sunak will actually see for once there's an issue here where he could become popular and support it, because he was so equivocal about it.
But it will mean, Andrew, and he's not very good at this, it will mean that he's got to offend people who are kind of his own type. He's got to get the banking giants in the room, people he will have huge affinity with. He might have been at university with them, they might have worked together at Goldman Sachs in the city or wherever it is. But he is going to have to learn to offend people who are his natural tribe, if you like.
And the Chancellor too. We need
and the Chancellor too. And this is really a test case, because it'll be very interesting to see whether or not the British government, we run the financial capital of Europe, arguably the financial capital of the world when it comes to currency transactions. And he needs to tell people, no, this is going to happen. I'm the Prime Minister, I'm telling you.
Who benefits from a cashless society, Liam?
Well, firstly, it's the businesses who don't have to pay for cash handling. Then it's the
big businesses.
The big businesses. I think also it's the kind of MasterCard, Visa, not alleging any wrongdoing from them, but it's the kind of card companies themselves. Talk to any cabbie, be it in London, Manchester, Birmingham. I've taken cabs in all those cities in the last few weeks, and every single time they've recognised me, they said, this thing is killing me. I only want to take cash. It's becoming increasingly difficult to only take cash. I'm having to stand with punters outside cash points. I can't charge them when I'm waiting for them to pay me. But every single time the cabbie takes the money, that card company gets a percentage.
Of course they do. Of course
and it's a high percentage.
Liam, so I want to ask you about one other issue, because of course this is dear to us here on GB News. Nigel Farage having his bank account closed down. 7 other banks say no, clear off. We know that Dominic Lawson wrote about this in the Daily Mail yesterday. His 16-year-old Down syndrome daughter denied a bank account because her grandfather was the former Chancellor General Nigel Lawson. Even the Times have done a lead today saying it's got to stop. How have they been allowed to get away with it for so long?
It's a classic case, Andrew, of computer says no. And you need human intervention to say, actually, the computer's wrong in this case. The Down syndrome granddaughter of a deceased Chancellor. I mean, just
a very distinguished...
Absolutely insane that young person should be denied a bank account. Absolutely insane, that our colleague Nigel Farage should be denied a bank account. And I think he's actually up to 9 banks now that he's approached and been rejected by.
Would this computer have stopped him having the bank account if he'd backed Remain in the referendum?
It's difficult to say. There are rules that exist if you're what's called a PEP, a politically exposed person. And, Nigel is obviously a high-profile person, but a vicar who wrote to his bank saying that he was concerned about the bank's policy on diversity and so-called woke issues.
Too many pride flags fell on their branding.
He's to have his... I mean, he wasn't expressing anything that was illegal or illegitimate in terms of his experience.
It's a legitimate opinion.
It's a view that some people will agree with. I imagine lots of people will disagree with. But don't take the guy's bank account away. And this is the point. As we move to a cashless society, that if you can't get a bank account, there's more and more limitations. You can't function as a member of society. So how completely ridiculous of the banks at this very moment that we are starting to talk about the cashless society to be blocking high-profile people from actually getting a bank account. It's completely tin-eared in terms of their PR strategy.
Really bad. And we should name the bank. It was Coots with Nigel Farage, which is part of NatWest, which is still partly state-owned, I think.
Which is still partly state-owned.
Out flipping rates.
But look, GB News viewers and listeners, sign our petition.
Absolutely.
Go to gbnews.com/cash. You can do the QR code on the screen as well. Sometimes I can never get my phone up to the screen in time. But go to gbnews.com/cash and sign our petition. And let's quickly get to that 100,000 mark of the signatures. And let's try and make a little bit of noise about this. Because, as we always say on GB News, if it matters to you, it matters to us.
That's right. And it's a bit of a hassle sometimes to find a cash point. It's a bit of a hassle to use cash. But the implications of not having it in the system are huge. And we have to look to the long term of what the implications of this might be.
So do sign that petition as quickly as you can.